Bergstrom,
Yes.
Merrick,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Van Sickle.
Yes.
All right, I will take a motion to approve the agenda unless there's a problem.
So moved. Second.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Van Sickle,
Yes.
Merrick.
Yes. All right, on to the items of business. First, we've got presentations, celebrations, and reports. I'm going to interject here just a moment before you go. So, ever since you've gotten here, Mr. Heyer, we feel like you've just done such a good job of recognizing other people and celebrating the people that work for you and for our community. And so we were curious, when is Superintendent Appreciation Day? According to Google, there is not a widely celebrated Superintendent Appreciation Day. So today is Ogden Superintendent Appreciation Day, June 9th. So we just really appreciate everything that you've done. Ogden is a better place because of you and your leadership. And I would welcome any other comments by board members if you have anything else you'd like to add. Board?
I second that.
Absolutely. Ditto.
Yeah. Truly, there is just so many. I know you walked into a few problems, and some of those things are like an elephant, and you've had to eat one bite at a time. But there are so many things also that you've seemingly changed with the snap of your fingers. But we know that behind the snap of your fingers is a lot of work and a lot of thought and a lot of hours spent even outside this building. So, and just the commitment that you've made to Ogden, the way you've embraced our town, we just really appreciate you. So happy Superintendent Appreciation Day.
Thank you. Thank you. Unexpected, appreciated, and not needed. But thank you so much, all of you. And the why behind that is A, our kids, and B, I got a really good team that I work with. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, with that.
So I'll start mine with saying happy Superintendent Appreciation Day. I'm going to have it on my list, but we added it there. It's been a busy month since our last board meeting. I won't go into too much detail for some of the things. We had music concerts. We had class night where we gave over 600,000 in scholarships. Our kids have earned over 600,000 scholarships. We hosted regional track. Reed and his team were awesome at that. We've had nothing but compliments in terms of hosting such a big event. We had the Bill Mullins Field Day, which I know Amy might go into a little bit more. We had graduations. We had 8th grade recognition, middle school musical. If you did not get a chance to go watch Little Mermaid, you missed a good show because those kids put on a great performance. I went and watched rehearsal the Monday night before, and they really pulled it together there at the end. They were awesome. A little nervous Monday, but they were outstanding. We have talented kids. I was going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we did preparing for the cell phone legislation. I know you guys are going to talk about it. I won't say too much, but Mr. Heyer had some of our teachers pilot some different housing devices. I know you'll talk about that more later. We had good feedback from both students and adults in terms of the pros and cons of each. We tried a new finals schedule. Not sure how successful it was. I'm going to get some more feedback from my adults.
Well, there's some feedback.
But they were willing to try something. It may or may not have worked, but we're going to revisit that and see if it's something we stick with or we maybe go back to something that we used before. And then I'm excited to be done with year one. I learned a lot. I've got a lot to do this summer, but it's nice to have some context and some experience behind the activities and the events that we have going on. July, I said last July I was unconsciously incompetent. I didn't know what I didn't know. So having some context, I'm excited about things to come for our district.
Does anybody have any comments, questions? That track meet was the talk of the town.
It was awesome.
I mean, people were just blown away by how smooth and just cool that was. So really well done. Do you feel like an Iowan yet?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
I still wear K-State purple, but
Well, yeah. We'll work on that.
Yeah.
We can't be perfect. Go ahead.
So just kind of a wrap up. I think I shared last month a lot of our events that ended the school year, but just wanted to give you some final numbers from Mileage Club that our students gave, or finished with. So they, as a school, ran 2,499 miles during recess. There were 53 students that ran 15 miles or more. 32 students that ran 20 miles or more, 28 students completed a marathon during recess, 14 students ran 30 miles or more, 6 students ran 35 miles or more, and we had 2 students that ran over 40.
That is so.
So they really embraced that, and it was interesting. The lady from Mary Greeley called that kind of headed it up, and they are going to highlight Ogden Elementary in their upcoming newsletter. They just appreciated kind of what I'm going into next with Field Day, but just the creative thing about how some families came and engaged with it, and then with our high school and middle school students, which I'm kind of going to go into next. But we wrapped up the year with Field Day, and just it was super windy, but it was nice. It was a great day for Field Day, but I think we could not do that event without our middle school track students helping with every class and getting them where they need to be and encouraging students. And then we had middle school and high school students this year act as pace runners for the mile. So we had 25 students run a mile. And if you could have been on the track and listened to the conversation, so a lot of the kids were like, no, I don't think I'll do that. And as soon as we said some of the high school cross country and track runners were going to run with them, 25 students wanted to do that. And then it was windy out, and we're like, oh gosh, they are never going to make it through this. So I'm telling the high school students, it takes them about a recess, like time to be able to run a mile. And so I go, don't make them run too fast. They're never going to make it. And the first group gets done, and the high schooler goes, that was a 7 minutes 30 second mile. You led us astray. Like, so they just was neat, but I think that was because of the middle school and high school students just really encouraging them and talking to them. So it was neat to listen. And then a lot of other students left being like, I want to be able to do that next year. So that's definitely because of our secondary students that made that happen. Our last day of school, we had a luau and beach party day, which was a surprise for students. So the teacher set that up, and just what it was each grade level went out for an hour, and it was fun just to see our staff and kids interact together through playing. We had huge beach balls, and they played volleyball, pickleball. We did relays. The limbo had music, but it was great to just see them, every student, be able to have fun with their grade level and with their staff, and then hopefully started a new tradition, but we did a 5th grade clap out. So the 5th graders were outside last. And then similar to when the seniors walked through, we ended up lining the halls and did a clap out for 5th grade. And some of them were completely embarrassed by it, and some of them were excited about it, but just some fun ways to start to honor kids in different ways. And then really wrapped up the year, checking out with each of our staff members. And I'm always excited to hear how it's exhausting at the end of the year, and they're already thinking about how to make their classroom and their instruction even stronger going into the 25-26 school year. And they're reflecting on their individual career plans and what they can do. And even in the first couple weeks of summer, staff members have stepped up and wanted to talk through different ideas and are excited already about next year. So looking forward to working with our ILT this summer and starting the planning for next year.
Any questions or comments? No? Great job, Amy. Got some cool stuff going on. All right, on to the consent agenda. Any questions there? No? Good.
I'll move to approve.
Great. Taylor?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Mansicle?
Yes.
Bergstrom?
Yes.
Merritt? Yes. All right, on to our action items. First, facility master planning reports.
Absolutely. So FRK, Rochelle, and John are here, and we had a group of stakeholders over the last probably 4 to 6 months come together. We had a different 3 meetings. You guys already know that we had a group go through and kind of do an audit of the facilities. I always use that as what is underneath the hood of the car. FRK kind of take that information, and really the purpose of these were, let's vision and forecast what are some of the things that we might need in the future to make sure that we're programming to meet the needs of our students. So FRK has been a partner. They did some projects with us in the past, and they led us through that work, and they're here to present their findings.
Oh, sweet.
That was not the presentation.
Yeah, they're obnoxious. They're kids. Well, I'm Rochelle. I know you've met John before, but you haven't had a chance to meet me. I am one of the architects, but also a principal at FRK Architects. So really excited to be in front of you guys today. And John and I have had some great opportunities to meet with your community, your staff, your admin as well. So, and a couple students, I think, joined us too. John, I don't know if you want to reintroduce yourself or he hasn't changed.
Yeah. Architect and educational planner for FRK.
So in your packets, we kind of go through this as well. You should have received a packet, a PDF from.
Yeah, so on Friday in your guys' packet, you guys
Oh,
received
no,
a
that
digital
packet,
copy,
yeah.
and then we will give you a hard copy probably later this week.
Yep. So you'll have that digitally. We're just kind of doing a summary of that packet, so you can follow along. So just wanted to kind of start with the master planning process. Obviously, you guys had a what's under the hood, right? Facility assessment done back in 24 of last year in April. We took it a little bit further in early this year. We got together with your admin, your staff, and talked about the building program and kind of how your high school, middle school, and your elementaries are being utilized. So how are they currently functioning? Are they functioning well for you from a program perspective? And really diving in to understand if the space is adequate enough for what the education is, the kind of education that's happening in those spaces. So we walked through that. There are reports in that PDF as well in the appendix that dive a little bit deeper into that if you want to see a breakdown of all your spaces. The last but not least, this was the most fun part for us, is meeting with your committee. So Joshua put together a committee of about, I don't know, it was ranged 12 to 16 people that joined us every time. Different people sometimes didn't come to every meeting, but consistency was pretty good for how many people we had. And we had 3 visioning sessions. And so 3 nights that we asked people to join us to talk about the future of Ogden and what does that look like from both a facility perspective, but also just generally what are your perceptions of Ogden School District? So the first night, we talked through the existing facilities a little bit just to kind of give people an update on where things were at. We talked about the program, and then we talked about funding sources. So obviously you guys are aware of your funding sources with SAVE and PEPL, but we really wanted to educate your community on that as well. So we did that night as well. Well, Joshua did that, I should say. And then we went through a process of talking about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within your district. And I'll go into those just a little bit to give you a highlight of kind of what came out of that. And then we did an exercise called the Depth of Spaces, which basically is a wide range of experiences that teachers and students and staff can have within a building and an educational facility. And so they took this deck of spaces, basically a deck of cards with spaces on it, and really kind of narrowed in on what was really important to them for the school district. And again, I'll dive into that a little deeper here. So just wanted to highlight a few things on the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, and threats conversation. Obviously, a strength is your dedicated staff. Really good. People really enjoyed that. Highly regarded within your community and fostering a positive school environment. Community support, have a strong local investment in student success, which is really great. Got a lot of great feedback on that. Facilities and offerings, have a high quality of athletic facilities and a broad range of high school classes contributing to the well-rounded student. That was a strength as well. Some weaknesses that I want to highlight, student engagement. There were some concerns raised about student motivation and engagement within their learning environment and what they want to learn. Facility limitations. So there were some conversations about some small classrooms. So I know your original part, and John will talk a little bit more about this when we go into the actual facility tour we did. But there were some conversations of the size of the classrooms in your original 2-story high school. Resistance to change. So obviously change can be hard, but that is a weakness that people discuss. Opportunities, community growth. So obviously we're seeing some population growth, but you guys also have a very large open enrollment attendance, which is great. Opportunity and partnerships. Obviously there's a lot of great opportunities in partnerships with CMAP or other community colleges that people want to engage more with. So that seems like an opportunity to people. And then forward-thinking leadership. So the leadership is perceived as forward-thinking and progressive ideas in supporting strategic facility and learning. So you have a great admin that is trying to push kind of what is happening in education and push that into their student learning. So some threats, staff retention. Obviously trying to maintain your staff is always a challenge. So that seems really important, something to talk about. Resource, just having special education support and spaces for those, behavioral spaces dedicated to those. And enrollment numbers, just constantly worried about what your enrollment numbers are. So those were a few to highlight there on that. And then the deck of spaces here. So these are the actual cards that were selected. There was what, probably 30 to 40 cards within the whole deck, something like that. That we broke up into two groups of people, two groups of community members, and they were actually very consistent. They picked a lot of the same cards, which was very interesting. So your community is very well in sync with each other. But I would say that these really focused in on student activities and trying to create an experience of learning that's unique to that student or a project-based learning experience for them. So that was night one, so very broad and general. And then John's going to cover night 2 and 3, which we dive a little deeper into your high school, middle school, and elementary.
So as Rochelle said, we kind of went into that first meeting with a blank slate. We were trying to be very intentional about not pushing it one direction or another. We kind of let the activities bring out the information we saw. And within the group, we had a good turnout that first night and saw a good cohesion of ideas from them, as you pointed out. The same cards were kind of picked. We gave them two groups, two decks. They all had the same cards, and they only varied by 1 or 2 cards. But the theme was consistent. So we went into with a little bit more clearer direction the second. And this happened after we gave them a couple weeks in between each meeting. So we started off the second night with visioning at the high school, and we kind of planned it so we would concentrate on the high school this night, and the next night we concentrate on the elementary school. And what that allowed us to do is have some time for tour. Your admin was great here. They give us a tour of the building, the committee a tour of the building. We gave some exercises for them to look at regarding some of the deck of space cards that they picked from last time. What are opportunities in this building that embrace those cards? What are some of the challenges? And as we went through the tour, we had people take notes on that. And we brought them back for different activities. So we showed them plans of the facility based on their color-coded for use. So one color was middle school use, one color was high school use, one color was joint use. And kind of showed them, and as we were walking around, felt how students mixed, how they got around from one way to the other, and where some of those spaces that these activities were going to happen. We came up with some activities. We funneled in on some priorities, and some of the priorities that came out of that first night on this building were centralized career and technical education spaces. So right now we have those spaces. They're a little scattered throughout the building. They thought it would be more complete, be able to deliver programs better if they were cohesive and next to one another. So that was one of the directions for the group that night. The other one was high school upgrades, especially the older portion of the high school. Given the chance of getting spaces out of that, you had the opportunity to remodel classrooms with them if we took FCS and they're part of this overall CTE space, that would happen. But that was a priority that they needed to update the high school. And then another concern of theirs was more of a defined middle school, high school break. And you're not necessarily going to get rid of that in this building or in this district with the size you are. But right now they have middle school kids that come from here, go upstairs for classes, so they're filtering and mixing in a little more than they hoped. So that was one of the directions they thought to move forward with. And then the other one would be classroom reconfiguration. It should have been athletic. The locker room enhancements. We have some good facilities that you built over the years. There's support facilities around there that are outdated. They're a little smaller. They thought they could be of better use. So they thought some way of enhancing these spaces or expanding these spaces to support your athletic activities would be a positive move forward. So that was the high school plan. And then we kind of repeated the same thing. We also, and you'll see in your packet, in your report packet, went through kind of as more of an aesthetic thing, where we gave pictures of spaces throughout the high school of what they thought were the best spaces that kind of spoke to them on what they were thinking these programs would be. They weren't pictures of what we have here. They're pictures of, ideal pictures of what these spaces are represented in other schools. There was basically 4 or 5 boards with a dozen or more pictures each one. We gave them little stickers to put on the pictures that spoke to them. Those are represented in your report. You can kind of get a feel for what spoke to them. Going back to the day 3, then we did the same thing over at the elementary school. We did a nice tour of the facility. We kind of walked through who's using what spaces. Did the same activity, wrote down ideas of some of these things that came out of the deck of cards activity the first night. How are they represented in your school? How can they be better represented? Then some of those pieces that came out of that were repurposing the space in the lower level under the gym was kind of the top priority. Right now it's locker rooms. We used to be a middle school, so they're not used locker rooms, and there's a lot of storage happening down there. They thought they could move some specials down there and create more of a environment for those teachers to work collaboratively and open and remodel that space. Take some walls that have been placed over the years down there, and you can have an open space that is useful for elementary purposes. The other one was safety and security enhancements. This is specifically more towards the preschool end of the building. Right now, the sequence of getting kids into that is kind of a security. It's not up to security protocols that you have in other places for getting those kids in. Then enhanced educational spaces. That would be basically refurbishing some of the areas. We can replace the specials and put them in another area of the building. Revamp some of these other building classrooms into, number one, expanded space that we need to get kind of the space for when you're when you kind of have the classes that are on the edge of needing 2 3 sections. When you need that extra section, you need the flexibility and most you need the space to do that, and also give you the ability to maybe program some more preschool space up there. And then the first one kind of goes with, or the last one goes with the first one, is relocate those spaces for collaboration and get your spaces and specialist teachers working collaboratively together and enhancing these programs. We presented the plan as well, the balance. That plan is in your report. It kind of represents the use of the spaces, how you're using the building now. This is that space I was talking about underneath the gym, where it's all locker rooms that were built when middle school was built. It can be cleaned out of there and made into other spaces.
So next steps, I think, is a big question we have for tonight is, obviously this is new information to you guys, and it was a good experience to meet with your group, but what we kind of need is some direction on where the board and where the district wants us to take this and help much further. So we're able to give you guys some information on kind of what the community was thinking and what some of the options would be to move forward, but I think our question is right now, the priority list that we gave you for the middle school, high school, and elementary, is that a question we have for you guys, would that meet the district's needs or the district's values? And then, are there any adjustments that might need to be made to this plan? How are your feelings on it? And then, if this is if you're supporting this vision, what do we want to do for next steps? What are the next steps for you guys? We can obviously help facilitate that conversation, but we want to make sure we're not going beyond your comfort level of what you guys want to see there. So, any questions that you guys have? I know it's a lot to throw at you guys, so.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
You were talking about centralized career and technical classes.
Yeah.
My assumption is those are industrial technology. Some business, maybe.
Foods.
Yeah, so
FCS would also be robotics, computer lab, those kind of are all kind of part of your, and that list could go even beyond. You have agriculture as well, ag in there, so.
Sure.
So the CTE is kind of it's an overused acronym for what we're talking about here. We're talking about kind of creating authentic learning, hands-on learning type of spaces and programs, and having those kind of centralized and built up.
Okay. And real life experience.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding what that meant. And then there was a bullet point sports pipeline. It was a negative. You didn't mention that.
Yeah,
what does that mean?
Weakness. I believe that comment, and I was about just having more of an opportunity at a younger age to be into sports. And so that was more of a community comment, a general community comment of getting kids in sports younger so they have a better path to high school sports. Unless I'm recalling that differently, but that was my understanding from that as well.
You talked about special education spaces under the gym in the elementary.
Specials, not special.
Specials.
Correct. Yes, specials. Like
means
arts.
related arts. So I think what you'll see is that it's similar in nature to what the high school needs were. Your related arts, your exploratory, your CTE, some type of centralized location for them.
Hands-on things like art, computer science.
Mhm.
You also have your tags
Tags,
as well,
mhm.
so you can see those teal ones are kind of spread out within your elementary school. So trying to get them a little bit more centralized so they can actually utilize each other too and commingle, work on their students work together. Good question.
And then we're talking about classes that are tweeners. They're 2 sections or 3 sections. How many do we currently have that are? Do you have any 3-section classes?
K through 2.
Yep.
K through 2, we program for 3, and then we make that transition for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. We have put up some numbers as far as what we think an appropriate class size is, and it depends on a year-to-year basis, but some of them are maybe transitioning from 2nd to 3rd, and they're right at that cusp of, you get 2 or 3 more students, and we might, instead of needing 2 sections, we might need a 3rd section for some of those 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classes. Yep.
Okay, so ideally, if you create space under the gym, it potentially frees up 3 classrooms. Is that enough flexibility to address potential?
We didn't put the cart in front of the horse and start getting into design and schematic work. I think when you look at that facility and that campus, adding additional brick and mortar really isn't feasible. So how are you maximizing all the brick and mortar? I think the preliminary thought would be if you take the blue areas, they are just kind of placed based off of convenience rather than programming and intentionality. And if you were able to repurpose and move them to a different location, you could capture that space, and then you could have a flex room, or you could possibly expand special education suite to be able to support student needs. So I think it gives you some flexibility to continue to serve a K-5 population, varying, I don't know what it would be, grade level numbers, whether it needs 2 levels or 3. You might have a bubble class that comes through that you might need, that flexibility in space.
Most of the basement can be reutilized. Most of the walls that are in there are actually not very tall, so you have opportunity to recapture the space and better, utilize it better.
So in the design architecture industry, now that we're on the cusp of artificial intelligence, becoming more prevalent in our lives, what is the talk in your industry as far as how will AI change brick and mortar facilities? Was there any conversations that would be pertinent to actually this plan, and these conversations about AI should happen with us looking at this?
And I guess I would just want to make sure I'm answering your question right. When you
Yeah.
say that, are you considering less brick and mortar because of AI, or are you thinking about how you would program this differently using AI?
I would say yes.
To both, okay. I think brick and mortar for now, we're not seeing much adjustment from, people are still utilizing space like they were previously utilized. I think we realized during COVID that a remote work or remote classrooms isn't always the right way to go. Obviously, every student is different, every student learns different, and every district is different. We are not seeing, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're not seeing even at the national level that is changing the way things are. From AI to programming things, in the educational realm, I don't know that we've really seen AI take any type of grasp on things as far as, okay, tell me how to reprogram this, right? They might try and be somewhat successful, but it still takes a lot of community involvement in planning. So you want the perspective of the community involved too. And I don't know if that answers your second question, but I just want to make sure I'm getting your
Well, just
opinion wonders.
from the big picture
Yep.
standpoint, AI will change a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
including education.
Yeah.
So then, if we could look in the crystal ball best we can and develop a master plan that would kind of go along with the trend that AI is going to have on education, whether it's brick and mortar, whether it's these centralized career and technical spaces. How does that change? How are you going to educate the classroom different? What type of things are you going to educate? You know, all of those things are going to change the spaces that you need. What type of spaces?
So you're saying,
As far
have you
as
considered,
that, it's like how much electricity.
so you're saying,
Yeah.
will AI change our needs? Like, we're doing this, but have you considered, like, if AI will change what we need? Not
the
necessarily
programming
AI
space
do it.
you actually want. I see what
Yes.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes. The answer is definitely yes to that question. I think that starting to centralize your technical spaces is part of that AI conversation. And more, even with the project-based learning that's happening at your educational level right now, or at your elementary level, I think is only going to expand. I mean, I feel like you do so much from a project-based learning and collaborate amongst your groups, and I think that's even going to trend more as as AI gets more involved. I think you're going to see even more collaboration between different classrooms and groups.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any other thoughts, John. You're more versed on this than I am.
Yeah, and I'm involved in the A4LA, which is Success Learning. We have 6,200 members now worldwide. And we get together every fall, and this conversation is just starting to.
Okay.
We're not there with any sort of direction yet in the industry of how AI is going to change.
I do think we have to make sure we have enough technology in rooms to be able to provide that, right? Like power outlets, anything you need to try to get you as much future proof, right? We're never going to be able to predict the future.
Right.
But we can certainly try to help prevent, try to help lead it to that direction and make sure we have some things we know will be needed. Power is definitely one of them, right?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
even the way the room is organized and situated.
Absolutely.
Making sure it's flexible within your learning space. That's what we want to. So.
Flexibility is going to be the key.
It is. Yeah.
So.
Okay. That's all I have.
Who else? Really quick question for you three. Were any of you surprised, like, with the community response? Like, did they have any priorities, or, like, were you pretty much like, yeah, that is how we feel too, or did they say anything that made you go, oh, really? I'm gonna guess that.
I think for the most part, it aligned to what I thought. The thing that I thought was really interesting is allowing them the opportunity to walk into all the different spaces. So they looked in the nooks and crannies, and I think there were community members that see the front facade. They see the middle school, high school, they see the new gymnasium. And then when we started to get deeper into the building, they were able to see a brand new middle school classroom and the finishes and the space, the furniture, the collaborative. And they're like, yes, that's where I want my child to go. And then we walked them into some others, and they're like, ooh, now I see why we need this renovation, why we need a facility master plan. Because yes, we have great facilities and we have opportunities that we need to address.
Sure.
And I think our community really recognized that by allowing them the opportunity to walk through all of those spaces.
Good. Were you guys surprised by anything?
My answer was going to be the same as Mr. Ayers. I wasn't surprised by I wasn't surprised by their reaction to the new spaces.
Bet not. You probably had the same reaction a year ago, huh?
You can tell what's new and what's not.
Yeah.
You can see what what we have and what it could be.
I appreciated from the community members how they shared their own learning styles, and they were very different in their conversations, which then led them to why it's important to have spaces to collaborate, spaces to work one-on-one. So it kind of like circled back to a student lens that was interesting, that I wasn't expecting them to talk through.
Okay, so your question to us is what now, correct?
Yeah, what, the next steps, we could start looking at some design options. We can consider, you'd have to understand fully what your budget would be, right, for those kind of things. Or is there anything you need to investigate further? Are there things that you're still questioning about? Those are just, I know those are big questions, but we don't want to do work that doesn't suit you guys, right?
Yeah, you don't want to waste your time either.
Well, we want to make sure we provide you with what you want, right? With the end product that you want. So how much further, I guess, do you want us to take this?
How much does this align with what's in your vision as a board?
Do any of you have any thoughts, or do you feel like we need to get together and work session through this? In my opinion, we probably need to do that, period, right? But the question I think would be, when do we do that? Because we're not super clear on our funding right now.
No.
It will be a little up in the air, and we're working towards resolution on the, those questions, but it will be a couple months before we know that, correct?
Correct. I think it's fair to say that, the last year and a half, 2 years, has been an opportunity to just investigate what is our current reality, and then also what might we want this to look like in the future. For us to really say, hey, this is the direction we want to go right now is a little premature.
Yeah.
But I want to continue. We got some momentum here.
Yeah.
I want to be able to continue to be able to say, okay, if we want a comprehensive facility plan and we know this year this is what we're going to do, then we know we're going to do this year. I think it really requires us to come together at the table and have those deeper conversations of we know what our facility under the roof is. We now know what our vision possibly might be, what the community and stakeholders want it to look like. How does our finances align to that, and how can we start to bite off some of these portions to get that work done and be intentional and strategic with it? So, yeah, I think it's a conversation of, does it come back to construction subcommittee? Does it require a work session where we're really analyzing and working through some of this work? That's really, I think, maybe the decisions and thoughts that I was having tonight, that I hope that we were able to. I just don't want to be able, this is a great presentation, great information, and then we kind of stall out.
Yeah, I think you're right. It would be premature to say, hey, let's make a plan together, what we're going to do, because we don't know how much money we have, right? So obviously, but I think you're right to say that we do have some momentum here. So I also would hate to say, thanks, we'll see you in November. That's a long way away, and I do feel like maybe we should at least collaborate while it's fresh. Does that make sense? What do you guys think?
If you didn't do a board session, we could facilitate, helping to create that priority list. And what does that priority list to you guys mean? Does that align with you as a board? And then kind of work through that too. We'd be happy to help with that process. We've done that before as well.
What do you guys think?
Pete and I are on the facilities committee, I think.
That sounds right.
Yep.
I would probably lean more towards the work session and get everybody, just be my thought.
Yeah, I like the work session. I think the two big questions we have is scope of work at the elementary and scope of work at and what priorities, what's the priority list? And I don't know, I think as a board we can have all the priorities we want, but we really need to see what staff's priorities are. What makes sense for the next 20 years from an educating standpoint in with your current crystal ball. That's going to be a big piece of that puzzle. So what the timeline is on that, I don't know. But yeah, I like a work session with that kind of parameter as our starting point of here's what our priorities are. Now we just got to figure out the order and what we can afford and what process makes the most sense.
In that work session, would it be beneficial to have Piper Sandler here, or at least talk to them initially?
I think maybe we should have a meeting with Piper Sandler before, because Matt can
He can do,
estimate out when your voter couple and your new purpose statement are approved, here's what you would qualify for moving forward type of financing. I don't think he can talk a lot, so maybe that's a better conversation for us.
but that would be good information to have
To go
before
because
we go
otherwise
into that
we're
meeting.
just hypotheticals.
we can dream of all the wonderful things, but if we don't know what part of the elephant we're going to get off and when and how we're going to pay for it, and be fiscally wise with the choices that we make. So maybe it is Melissa and I meet, we really figure out what are some options with finances and how much dollars we might have. And then B, after we have that, we can present a summary of that meeting to start the work session.
Yeah.
And then now that we know that, maybe we could have you guys maybe facilitate some of that work session with the known. We know these are some of our priorities. We know this is how much we can afford and when.
Yeah. Is everybody okay with that plan?
So those dates probably to be determined.
Yeah.
It would depend on your first meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say probably, hopefully we can get that done before school starts.
Yeah.
You know, it'd
Sometime
be
this summer.
mid-July, early August.
That sounds good to me.
That would give us a month and a half or so to kind of get some things done.
Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily need any. There's no action being taken.
Really, yeah, I'm just making a commitment that Melissa and I will work with Matt Gillespie, and then at some point I will schedule a work session for us to discuss further information regarding what the findings are.
Well, thank you for taking the time to not only be here, but to spend time with our community and share those findings. So,
No, thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's nice to meet you guys. So, thank you.
Thank you.
thanks
Thank
you
you,
guys so
guys.
much. Okay, did anybody have any other comments or questions before we wrap that up?
So there are items that, for example, like buses, there's like it's on a plan already, right?
It is.
So if you and Melissa can kind of move those out of or segregate expenditures and say, well, yeah, we're getting this amount, but we have this committed to this. I don't know if we
Matt
have a-
takes that information into account when
Yes.
he does that. He pulls like our CAR reports and looks at what our regular expenditures appear to be when he's planning out maximum money. So yeah, we've got
that we're, we know that we have to just count the Nancy rules.
yeah.
Every year, maintenance, repair.
Yeah, we have that out through 2034, so we'll be okay.
Very
Okay,
good.
good.
So that, so we have that information available.
So basically take in consideration annual expenditures on what we are utilizing for our either voter PEPAL and or state dollars.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be in touch
Thanks,
with
you
you.
guys.
That sounds good. Thank you so much.
We appreciate y'all.
Thank
you.
Okay, let's move on to the AEA state funds transfer contract.
Yeah, absolutely. So previously, AEA dollars just used to flow through, and with Senate File 2612, they kind of changed some of those things, and now we are required to spend 90% of our special education allotment for special education dollars to go through AEA. But we need an action that basically says that we can monthly transfer that money. So the money, rather than flowing through, is now holding in Ogden, but we still need to contract 90% of dollars through them. So This is just basically an action that says that Melissa can pay them, to be honest.
I will move that we approve that contract for the transfer of the state AEA special ed funding.
I will second.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Van Sickle,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes. All right, along the same lines a little bit, AEA tag services agreement.
Yeah, so we had a .5 middle school, high school tag opening that was open probably early May. We posted that thing for about a month, and after a month, we didn't have any applicants. And I started talking to a few other superintendents in the area, and tag is a hard to fill area. And knowing the time frame that when we were, approaching early June, I wanted to be able to pivot and look at what are some other options. Ideally, we'd love to be able to hire a .5 teacher, but what if we don't have anybody? So I reached out to Heartland AEA, and they have a AEA consultant that is responsible for tag services and consulting. And I asked, could we possibly purchase some of their time to be able to support our needs until we have a more durable solution? And they came back and said, we would allow you to purchase 1 day a week of their contract. So they are still working for AEA, still doing the consultation role, but they're going to be able to really help support our middle school, high school until we can hopefully post for this position in November, December, January, and hopefully have a better opportunity of finding a .5 person. So what this is it's kind of a stopgap. It's an interim contract to be able to make sure that we're providing the services for our middle school, high school students until we get a more durable plan.
Point of order, I guess, a little bit. If you find a different solution, then is it board action to come back and cancel the agreement timing? Or as part of this motion, can we just say, and if we find another option, Josh,
Avoid the contract.
Or give them a certain amount of notice or
Yeah, it says that you can give 30-day notice, but if we do an early termination, we are still responsible for the full cost of that contract. So there is no cost savings then if we hire someone mid-year, we would have to pay out the rest of that AEA contract.
so how much time do we have to find an option before we have to pay 4/13?
I don't have the contract in front of me. What does it say? Timeline?
The contract is August 1st through June 5th of 26.
So August 1st is kind of a no-go zone.
I'd like to be optimistic and say we're going to find anybody. I think that honestly, our tag people have probably signed contracts and they're under contract for the 25-26 school year. Yes, I'm going to explore some other options, including even partnering with neighboring schools. But I truly think that this is going to be a plan in place, and our best opportunity to fill this is probably going to be January, February of next year. But I think you're bringing up a good point. When is it too late to no longer push this play?
But
It sounds
even
like
if-
it's August.
Let's say we hired someone to start second semester though. Well, I mean, you could make the argument, well, we don't need this person, so we're wasting $14,000, I guess. But would we be? You know what I mean? Because wouldn't that still be helpful? Like, oh, hi, brand new tag teacher. You get what I'm saying? Like, it still maybe would be beneficial. Yeah, it would still probably be beneficial to have that person coming, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure we could utilize that as a consultation. And they're
Yeah.
truly looking at how are we programming K-12, and they're working with Julie and our new hire, and really they're creating a comprehensive plan supporting and enriching our talented students.
Right. So I'm just saying, like, I think even if we were to find somebody, I don't think that we would be,
Sure.
I don't think that it would be like, oh no, now we have to keep this helpful AAA person coming, that we've already paid for. You get what I'm saying?
Yep. I'll make a motion to approve the ADA tag services agreement department.
I will second it.
Taylor,
Yeah.
Thompson,
Yes.
Van Sickle,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes. All right, milk and bread. This looks pretty straightforward, am I right?
Yeah.
Yep, no
So-
change from last year.
No changes. She sent out, and in the board write-up, we kind of talked about the quotes that we received, and the recommendation would be to not to change AEA and Hanover bread.
I'll make the motion to
Or Pano
approve
Gold.
Anderson Erickson for milk and bread bid from Pano Gold.
Second.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Van Sickle,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes. Okay, on to, safety class bids.
Absolutely. So we are starting to, in our continued effort to improve our safety across our campuses, we are looking at trying to put in bullet resistant glass in strategic locations in our building. It's a combination of partnership. We received some funds from the Ogden Alumni Association. I wrote a mini grant to the Leonard Good Foundation, and they've allocated some dollars. And we're using some of our Boulder Pepple dollars and kind of a match. And ultimately, we're trying to slowly address some of those areas and improve the safety. We received some quotes and just making a recommendation to hopefully start to enhance the middle school, high school areas.
When would that start?
Pending if it got approved, and actually the quote came in under what we were expecting to spend. So with that, I'm going to have them quote out some things at the elementary, and hoping that we will be able to tackle both of those projects before the start of school.
Awesome.
I move we approve the safety glass bid from Reflections. Some chips out.
I will second.
Taylor, Thompson,
Yes.
Van Sickle,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes. All right. Whew, moving on to insurance.
Yeah, a big expenditure on an annual basis out of our management, but EMC Insurance is who we go with, and Hans is our agent. You guys can see the value there, but it's annual expenses of $230,000 for our renewal this year. Last year we paid $255,000, so it is a little bit down. But the next item that you will see is a part reason for that. There was last year pulled into that EMC Hans where it was a storm buy down. That our deductible, if there was a derecho that went through, was going to be high, so we bought that down. We have a different option, which will be our next line item or recommendation on how we're going to be able to continue to do that buy down. It's just not through EMC. So ultimately, I would say the premiums, pending your approval, would be about the same, if not maybe about $5,000 more this year. But the first one would be is continuing our property liability and auto insurance with EMC.
I'll make a motion to approve the property liability insurance with state insurance.
I'll second.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Van Sickle,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes. All right. Keep going, Mr. Hire. You
All
can talk
all
more
right.
insurance.
Yeah, so with that, again, I was talking about that storm buy down, and I think what happened is derecho happened. We had so many claims by so many people, and our insurance agencies came back and said, we're losing probably hand over fist here. So they were going to go ahead and start to increase your deductible a significant amount. I think ours was going to be, if we had a claim, $400,000 to $500,000. So you're talking $500,000 if we have a storm event just to be able to pay the deductible. They came with an alternative option and said you can lower your deductible by paying a gap insurance or a buy down. And they went ahead and came up with a pooling. So that's really a 28E consortium agreement where a number of schools are pooling their dollars together to buy that $500,000 deductible down to $10,000. So that way, if we were to have an event, yes, we're paying for the premium, this additional, but we can manage $10,000 versus $500,000. So I think it would be the best interest for the district to pay for this annual additional buy down premium. I do have more information. I think there was some in your packet. But this is just an additional information if there are things that kind of talk about the Storm Protection Fund, how it originated, and really on where the dollars are going and those types of things. It's a front and back for you.
Yeah, so basically, from the insurance standpoint, we're rolling the dice. We'll spend $38,000 this year, and not have to spend the $500,000 in a deductible situation in a
Absolutely.
large storm event. And that's well worth it to me anyway.
I agree with you.
I mean, the additional premium, you would have to pay that 12 to 15 years before you would hit the $500,000. And just $500,000 coming up with that is just really tough. It's
If there are any other questions, I'll make the motion to approve the resolution to participate in the Storm Protection Fund for $28,363.
Second.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Van Sickle,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Merritt.
All right, more insurance, equipment break fix insurance.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about this. Last year, we presented to you guys a break fix program, which was through Jester. That allows a large amount of our maintenance items or equipment that is electrical in nature to be able to be reimbursed if it were to break. I'd say last year we probably purchased a Cadillac plan, and we were overinsured, I guess you can say. It was out of our management, and we're trying to really find that sweet spot of A, should we even do this? And B, if we do it, where is that sweet spot between how much break fix insurance do we need versus what we don't need? We started to look at it, and the initial premium that we had last year had over 700 devices on electric devices, computers, between the Chromebooks, staff computers, and those types of things. When you start to take that away, preventative maintenance with some HVAC, our premium went from $107,000 down to, I think it's the close to $40,000 right there. In addition, this also protects a little bit of our food and nutrition account. If there were to be equipment that breaks down in food and nutrition, it needs to come out of the food and nutrition bucket, if you will. And if there's ways that we can protect that, this is one way that we can use management dollars to protect that budget. Our food and nutrition does have a surplus, but we are quickly overexpending our revenues. So if we can recoup some of those things, I think that this is a good option. We did purchase over too much last year, and I recognize that, but I think that this is something I would like to continue to try until we find out what that sweet spot is. And the sweet spot might be that we just no longer do it. But I think we're pulling back and we're trying to figure out what that might be. Just for your guys' record or information, here is what equipment is covered in this program. So I think it just gives you kind of a better idea. This is a comprehensive list of all the things that you can cover. The X's is what would be covered if you guys approve the recommendation tonight. You can see there are some items that are just no longer on that we removed to hence lower that premium.
Maybe you mentioned a figure. How much did we utilize this last year?
Melissa helped me out, but it was 28,000?
24.
24,000 is what we used last year.
That were claims.
That claims.
Oh,
we
okay.
recouped $24,000 early.
And we spent, again.
It was over 100,000 last year. Yes, it was. It is insurance. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it is. It is hopefully protecting us in the event that we have some major breakdowns. Yeah.
I like that we're stepping it down a little bit before we just get rid of it altogether. I think this seems like a good middle ground and see how it goes. There's no other questions or comments. I would
I'll second.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Van Sickle?
Yes.
Bergstrom?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes. Okay, on to the employee handbook. It looks like we've listed here what was changed, and I think these are all things that we've already approved in other meetings actually, that are just now translating.
They're going into the handbook.
Yeah.
So there are some things that I would really like to highlight, like the enhancement of the sick leave bank. We just had some more clarity on exactly what that is, and I think that's going to be a benefit to our employees. So we try to clarify that a little bit. 15 sick days. It used to be where you would get 15 sick days initially in year one, and then it went back to a tiered 11 days, then 12, then 13, and it built up to 15.
For teachers only.
For teachers only. We're just go ahead and we're removing it and saying you get 15 days. So I think that's a benefit. And then when we went through negotiations, we talked about a percentage versus just a flat rate for some changes when you go from a like BA to a master's and those types of things. So I think we're really just taking and trying to incentivize and support some of our employees with some of those changes.
If there are no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve 25, 26.
I'll second.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Van Sickle?
Yes.
Bergstrom?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes. All right, summer band lessons.
Pretty straightforward here. We're just kind of going through, and ultimately it's $35. It's been that rate for a while, and making a recommendation to increase that to $40 for that fee.
Seems reasonable.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Van Sickle?
Yes.
Bergstrom?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes. Policy adoption. So we usually kind of run through these because we've all read them, but this one's a little more
Yeah, I'd
new
like to.
and nuanced. So if you wouldn't mind
Yeah.
sharing a little more about that.
Last legislative session, there was House File 782, which basically talked about personal electronic devices in school settings. And ultimately, legislatively, they put some restrictions on school districts. So after that was passed and signed by Governor Reynolds, the Department of Education had a certain amount of days before they had to send out some sample language. They provided school districts with that sample language, and then ISB, our partner, Iowa Association of School Board, took that as well, and they started to write sample policy. Tonight I have for you guys for a first reading the sample policy, and I just wanted to go over this a little bit more detail. The first part, what they really said is that there's some things that you can't change. The law is the law, the policy is the policy, but I highlighted in what I gave you guys for 5039 A and B. A was they allow local control to really determine what is the definition of instructional time. So we sat down as an administrative team and really started to look at what does instructional time mean. Does that mean nothing at campus at all, 7:30 to 3:30 you cannot bring it, or does it mean the same at an elementary as it should at the middle school, high school? And ultimately, the definition that we are presenting to you tonight would be is that instructional time is defined as the mean period between the beginning of class until the end of class, and at the elementary only, it includes lunch, recess, and passing periods. So if I were to read that, it says that your instructional time at the middle school, high school is 8 o'clock to 8:43, 8:46 to 9:23. It is not the time between their passing period. It is not their lunch time, those opportunities. At the elementary, because it says at the elementary only, it means basically from 7:55 until 3 o'clock. No personal electronic devices. So it is it's a little bit more restrictive at the elementary in our recommendation, and it is slightly tiered at the middle school, high school to allow them an opportunity to maybe check or send a quick message, those types of things. B, they actually said that you could, as a school district and a board, really define what is a personal electronic device. There are some conversations on, is that just a cell phone? Or is it, I just got a message on my watch? Is that a distraction? And should that be included or not? And the definition that we have presented to you is verbatim what we received from the Department of Ed. So we did not make any recommendation or changes on that, and it includes your mobile phones, your smartphones, your video game devices, your watches, those types of things. So that is what we are making a recommendation tonight to include in the first reading would be is A, what does instructional time mean at the elementary, middle school, high school, and what does a personal electronic device mean in Ogden Community Schools? So that's clearly defined. And then I did highlight, finally, there are some exceptions to this. And I think it makes common sense that if we were to have an IEP and in that individual education plan, for some reason they need that device because it's part of their programming, we would certainly make those accommodations because it's embedded in that. Or it might even be an individual health plan. I mean, we have students that have diabetes and they need to be able to check their values and numbers to be able to say, are they high or low based off of that? And we have to make common sense and be reasonable with those certain situations. And it is making that that clear in that policy.
From reading this, it's not requiring them to put them in a container when they walk into this. Is that correct?
Great question, Earl, and that's going to be the back. But yes, I can either go there right now or we can ask, is there any questions about the first page? Let's do that. Is there any questions besides what Earl brought up regarding what we've defined on 5039? If not, then I can answer Earl's question.
The request to retain access for whatever reason, whether it's part of a plan or a special request, is that available anytime to the parents to, or
yes.
Is it only at
no, I think we need to be reasonable,
yeah,
and at any point they contact our administrative team, we're going to sit down and work with them. We're not going to say, sorry, you missed your opportunity. It's August 23rd. It's too late.
So,
yep. Yep. Great question. Okay, so then the second portion is the regulation that supports the policy. And in here, Earl, it actually talks about what we are expecting for the students. I think really it goes into that second paragraph. Students may store their personal electronic device in their backpack or in a designated location in the classroom. And what we actually had is some teachers pilot some options. And we want to make it consistent, and so that a student does not say, well, first hour I'm expected to do this, second hour I'm expected to do this. I would say it is in their backpack and it's turned off and it is not a distraction. I carry my cell phone right here, and maybe it's a temptation or a distraction for me. I want to do this. We're going to purchase these for all middle school and high school classrooms so it's a consistent experience. And really, I think it's kind of funny. I almost want to put ET here, my phone home. But really, it's lock capability, and then it has the storage that students can actually put that device in. And that might be part of the routines, the practices, the processes that the teachers do at the beginning. And kids just know as they walk in, I'm going to be putting my cell phone in here. Before, you're getting ready to do roll call attendance, you come, you lock it, and then the teacher takes the key. And at the end of the hour, kids will come and they'll grab their phones. So it is an option, and according in that regulation, A, it can stay in your backpack, or B, it needs to go in. The universal is our initial plan on how we are going to approach it. I talked to Amy, and Amy does not feel like it's needed at the elementary to be going through and purchasing those. It's more of an expectation that they are keeping those things in their lockers. Is that correct?
So you're saying it's an either or it's going to be everybody has it in the backpack or everybody has it in the box, and every teacher follows all of the exact same plan.
Yep. In the way that it's written, it is either in your backpack or it is in here. There isn't a third option of, or you can put it on your back or in your pocket, or you can put it on your desk, or it is, we're doing one of the two options. And I think
student's choice.
Correct. Yeah, that's the way that it is written right now.
And I hate that. Because then I'm, as a teacher, would have to be going around and looking at a person's pocket, or if every teacher has a box, and that's just an automatic thing, but it's a hassle. It would be a hassle for the teacher. I agree. But if everybody's doing the box, then there's no other options, and this is the way we're going to do it. Period. I don't have my backpack. I left it, and this kind of. No, you just put it right there, and that's me. And when I used to substitute in Boone, it drove me nuts that people in some classrooms would have some kind of a device like that. And then you'd go to another classroom, oh, don't worry about it. Oh, she lets us just keep it. So it's everybody does the exact 100% the same thing, and then there's no negotiation by the teacher. You say, nope. That's my personal. If I had to, I don't know how much the expense is. Probably $100 a piece, or
They're north of $50. Yeah.
but the other side of the coin is the teachers. What are they saying? I mean, I could see them look at that thing and go, "Oh, brother, this is another 2 minutes at the front, 2 minutes at the last. I've got to manage something. I'm just trying to get it quiet, and I got to manage this stupid phone situation." So I can see where the teachers wouldn't like it at all.
Sure.
So
Derek we gave him 4 or 5 days. It wasn't a lot, and it didn't get to a lot of people. It was at the end of the year. We had 4 different options, and he actually had some teachers kind of vet it through and give feedback. And Derek actually said that you got positive feedback based off of it.
Yeah, so the teacher that had this, we had different options. So there was 2 that locked. One that was a little bit bigger and had like a clear front on it. There was one that was just open faced and this kind of like a desk caddy almost that your cell phone would just slide in. And then another one that looked like a calculator caddy that you would have hanging on the wall that just had snags. The teacher that had this one liked it for a couple of reasons. One, she didn't think that it took a lot of time at the beginning or the end. It was just the phones were in. She took the key out and that was it. The thing that she did like about this was in the event of emergency, she just grabs that whole thing and just takes it with her. So she's taking phones that are already locked up in the box with her on the way out the door. Couple of snags that she ran into originally was that kids that would have like the pop locks on the back of their phone, they don't necessarily fit into one of the slots, but you can also just set it in there sideways. To answer your question about the in between and being consistent, I think the expectation when a kid comes to the classroom is you are expected to put your phone in the case. Otherwise, if it's seen at all, then it's in violation. So the expectation, if they may have it in their backpack and turned off, we're not going to go searching everybody's backpack to make sure they've all turned their phone in. But it's either in the phone case or we don't see it at all. It's not like they're hiding it and sending it. If we see the phone, then it's a violation. So
I'm glad to lean towards that effort. It's just nice and clean.
I think it is going to be an adjustment, obviously, for teachers to figure it out and get used to it. But I think it just becomes one of those things. Hopefully, because one of those things where it's not totally.
I think I like the idea of the 2 options, especially starting next year with the new policy. Because for every kid that is going to leave a class early for whatever reason, they can think ahead and just leave it in their bag, and the teacher's not stopping to get somebody's phone out.
That's a good point.
So I like to have the options this coming year and see what works. I mean, I got $5 that says we're going to tweak it a little bit for next year. It's okay, but I'm just glad to see that it's going in the right direction.
So with the box option, is the school taking on any kind of liability for the phone?
In here, it actually talks and it says that, let me see where it is, because it actually talks about it. It's the second to last. The district, however, is not responsible for loss theft, or destruction of personal devices on school grounds. So that's where we're making it clear in policy. But I do think, to your point, though, of if the school district is expecting and asking for it to be over there, and all of a sudden something were to happen to that, is there any potential liability there?
I think it's also nice to why they have the option to do the backpack. If they don't feel safe with their phone in the box, they turn off the backpack.
Yeah. And just understand, if they choose to use their phone, they're in violation of the law, not only policy, but the law. And then to see what I have here is that there's tiered consequences. And, those tiered consequences will be in our student parent handbooks, and our administrative team will start to work on those things as far as what those tiered progressive consequences would be for a student that's in violation. Clearly, at the elementary, it's going to look a little bit different. Middles, maybe not. I think honestly, I'm going to give that to these guys over here. They're much more versed in what they need, but what those consequences would be. What questions do you guys have regarding, I would say, one of the larger changes that came out of the legislative session as far as for impacting schools? Any questions?
Hey guys.
Add from are you glad that the legislation did what they did with this? Did it give some finality and say?
Yeah, because I think what I'm going to answer with two responses there. Yes, it gives us clarity because everybody is expected to do this, and it's the law. So it gives us some teeth to be able to support that. There are clearly where cell phones are distractions, where you're supposed to be focusing on instruction, you're worried about what's on your social media feed. That is an issue. I also think that we have an opportunity to use this as a tool. And how are we teaching our kids? An exemption or an example could be, though, we have a kid that's taken a DB course, they need two-step authentication. So I think there needs to be some common sense here too, of yes, no cell phone should be used, but they're logging onto their computer, and in order to log into DMAC, they have to pull that open and look at their code. Or we're doing authentic learning and we're taking maybe pictures to really showcase what we did in a lab. I think there's appropriate times and places, and allowing possibly some opportunities for that, I think would be beneficial. So I'm answering the question two ways, Earl. Yes, I think there's teeth and there's clarity, but I also think it's our responsibility too to start to teach them how to use this tool appropriately when so asked to do so. And that's under the discretion of our teachers.
And that's a tough one. Yeah. Because it's out of control for 18 hours out of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even with adults.
I'm sorry.
Even with adults.
We're guilty of it too.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you think, guys?
I'll make the motion to approve the first reading of 5039 and 5039R1.
Second.
Oh, I'm gonna take that. Taylor,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Van Sickle,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes. All right, some more policy reviews. These looked to me like
No changes.
yeah, legal things, unless someone had a problem with the radon mitigation. I think.
And one thing I'll even give you guys information, the radon mitigation, there was a legislative change that said that all schools had to have a mitigation plan in place by 2027. So Billy and I are actually going to be jumping on and doing some training to allow us to be able to do some of that testing to find out if we need to do mitigation. So
Well, I was joking, but isn't that something?
yeah. So actually, we're jumping. It doesn't have to be in place until 2027.
Okay.
We're actually going to be doing that work this year.
Okay. I think everything else was pretty, unchanged. So
I'll make a motion to approve all these readings of these policies, first and final.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Van Sickle,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Merritt.
yes. No. I think it goes,
Oh, I didn't have it. Do you guys want to talk?
anybody have anything lovely to say? Not today. Okay. Well, we'll move on then. And there's nothing on the board calendar. So I think we'll just throw it over to you. How about that?
Yeah, it's going to be, I know it's summer and everybody's ready to go, but I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about school perception data. It's something that we've discussed a little bit. You guys approved the contract for that. We've ran it for 2 years now, so I just want to give a little bit more of a detailed information and some of the results that we've been able to receive so far. So I'm going to grab my computer. I got about a 2-minute video to kind of get things started, and this will probably take about 10 more minutes, I'm guessing.
All right.
Okay, perfect. So this is just directly off the School Perceptions website, but it's a 2-minute really nice introductory about the company. So I'm going to go ahead and present that to you guys, and then I'm going to dive into more information about Ogden Community Schools using this service.
Does your team sometimes struggle to gather and organize all your school's data? You have assessment data, you have demographic data, but your plans also need to include perceptions data, feedback from your staff, parents, and students. Look, we get it. While some tools exist to gather their feedback, knowing where to start and how to ask the right questions, well, that isn't so easy. Making matters worse, creating your own surveys is time-consuming, and they can be perceived as biased when you send them out yourself. Consequently, results are questioned, and trust is broken. Over the past 20 years, School Perceptions has learned what works and where schools struggle. We've also built our own survey system that is easy to use, confidential, and cost-effective. Our research-based surveys will help you answer the following questions. For staff, for parents, and most importantly, your students. Working through a unique challenge? Need to customize the survey or have questions? No worries. At School Perceptions, you're assigned an account manager. In fact, that's the best part of our job. We're here to help you plan, gather, and make sense of your results. So, what if 80% of parents feel their child's school has a healthy culture? Is that good? Or do you have a problem? Our system answers those questions because we compare your results to similar schools. Using our system is simple. Our online survey software is designed to specifically meet the needs of schools. This means everyone on your team can access easy-to-understand results anytime, anywhere. It's smart. No one can take a survey multiple times, and folks can participate in multiple languages. And it's secure. We back up, protect, and maintain your data so you can quickly see trends from year to year. All schools have financial challenges. We understand that. So no matter your enrollment, School Perceptions fits your budget. So why not get started today? Call us at 262-644-4300 or
A promotional. So last year, I used the opportunity to have School Perceptions give us data from our community. So it was a parent survey, and we did a staff survey. In the video, they said that you could also do students. We chose to opt out of the student survey. Part of that was because there was some legislation as far as giving surveys to students and having them opt into that survey or not. We use that as a baseline just to be able to gather some information on where are we at with this information. The survey will actually give you, I would say, categories or bands. And there are multiple questions that are asked, but maybe in different ways, that they pool those responses on a 1 through 5 scale to give you a composite score based off of that category. We as an administrative team can dive into each specific question But I think when we're talking about giving overall reports to either the board or to the community, we're not going to drill down to the granular level of the questions. That's really more for our leadership teams. I'm going to give you guys the information on how are we performing in those subcategories on a longitudinal basis from year in or year out. And are we making growth, or are there opportunities for us to maybe focus on a specific category to enhance the overall experience and what people perceive of our school district, if that makes sense. So what I have here, and it's just a sample, you guys as parents probably have received this, but this is just a sample of what that survey would look like. It's electronic, it's confidential, they actually are connected to Infinite Campus, so they receive parent login information. I received a response rate. I have no idea who filled out the survey, but I am able to get that kind of response rate on what it is. We're able to change the survey. So if there was a question that the board was maybe interested in receiving information from the community about, we could maybe add that to be able to gain that information from the community. An example being last year, I was looking at our early release or late dismissal, and was Wednesdays the most effective time? Because I actually had a belief that I thought, and when I received the feedback from the community, my initial thoughts were not in alignment with the community, hence we did not make a change. So that was really a great opportunity for me to collect that information. And we're actually doing that with our desired daily experiences. So we embedded that in here. We don't have longitudinal data because that was year one, but I think over time we can say, are we making headway with that or not? I just like the fact that there's flexibility to be able to change the survey, as well as there's things that they have given nationally across a large population of schools over a 20-year time frame. So we're able to really be able to find out how are we performing in comparison to other schools over 20 years. Make sense so far?
Mm-hmm.
So far,
So can you, is it relatively the same survey, or can you do different types of surveys?
It's the same survey, but because we want to look at that longitudinal and are we making headway and or are we dropping? But we do have the flexibility to ask some one-off questions on a year-to-year basis if we so needed to.
Is there a capacity to do a standalone survey? Let's say like a building or something, when you want to get feedback. We do a standalone survey.
We could do that. It would be a contracted service, so we would just have to pay them to be able to perform that service for us.
Okay.
But yes, they can create and generate and use probably our database to be able to send that out and collect those results. We would just have to pay for it. Okay, so here are some of the results. Here is the parent survey summary, and it is a front back. Those subcategories or indexes that I was talking about are the informed, included, educational excellence, atmosphere, and experience. And again, those are multiple questions that are pulled together on a 1 through 5 scale. The thing that I like about this is up top, it tells you the number of respondents. So we had 231 families respond to the survey. You know, with us having 700 kids, but some of our families have multiple kids. So it says the response rate was only 26%. I would actually argue, I would say that we're probably in the 50 to 60% range as far as the overall people that were able to give us the feedback. You can see our current score on a 1 through 5 scale versus where we were previously. The thing that I think is interesting is what does that mean? And the thing that I have to go directly to is that right column, and they are comparing us on a 100-point scale on where are we at in comparison to other schools. So the parent survey, what their perception is of being informed, we are at the 90th percentile. So that means that we are outperforming 9 out of every 10 schools as far as our parents' perception on being informed. if that makes sense.
Is that a national number or Iowa?
That is a national number. Over 20 years, they've kind of been able to vet the survey. They're comparing that data. And it goes down the list where you can kind of see the different categories. The thing that I actually wish that they would do a little bit better on is the strengths and the areas of improvement. They simply are grabbing your lowest numbers or the percent changes. Because like the first one, it says school communication is both timely and transparent. We're at the 90th percentile. There was a great change there, which is exciting. Whereas if you go down to areas of improvement, we're at the 96th percentile, which is phenomenal, but it says it's an area of improvement. The reason why is it went down. It went from a 4.5 to a 4.39, but we're performing at 96, better than 96 out of 100 schools. So I don't really particularly care for how that reads, but nonetheless. And then there's overall satisfaction and how they want to be communicated.
So it's showing strengths and improvements by percent change more than
that is
can
correct.
You tailor that differently? Is that customizable?
We can, I think, on our back end possibly do that. Yep. And we can maybe look at growth. And I actually have done an analysis that I'll show you growth over time in some of those areas.
So was the October 23, were you here in October?
I was. It was my first year. I think I was probably here for about 4 or 5 months. Yep.
The numbers are great. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would argue those October numbers are not his you know what I mean?
Right.
Because he'd only been here a brief time.
So similar in nature, here is not quite as comprehensive, but is the staff index. And the areas that they have is academics, engagement, support, student experiences, and staff experiences. And you can see the current score versus the previous score. It gives you a percent change. So are we going in a positive or a negative direction with our staff experience, perception? And then where do we compare in comparison to other schools? So you can see those scores. And then the last thing, I wanted just to take all this information and have kind of a running over time school perceptions information. And so, oh wait, sorry, no, you're okay. The data that you have in front of you, I put together, I just tried to summarize all that information. So you can see the indexes for the staff survey is on the far left, and the parent survey is on the far left. You're able to see the sample size. So in 23-24, we had 74 staff versus this year we had 84, great participation. Parent survey sample size 220 versus 231. And then you're able to see those indexes on where they were for the 23-24 school year. And that would be in comparison to other schools on a 0 through 1. And then you're able to see where we are in 24-25. And then I did a percent change just to try and track this over time. I would intend on probably keeping the 24-25% change. Next year, add a 25-26% change. And we can start to identify, is there an index that maybe we are not performing at the level that we want? And then how do we as a administrative team make changes to address those areas? Overall, I'm very excited about the work. I think this really reflects a large amount of people that have impacted and changed this in a positive trajectory. So I'm very thankful for everybody leaning in and doing the right work. And I think it's reflective of the perception. Perception is only part of it. We have the quantitative data, the performance on how students are doing, but perception really matters, I think. And I think this captures, are we gaining the trust of our stakeholders? And I would say the data would tend to say that we're starting to do that.
what do we pay for this service?
Was it $4,000 or $5,000? Yeah, I believe it's $4,000 or $5,000, Earl.
To me, it's the best format and the best way to, it's a barometer that you can't get anywhere else.
Well, it's easy for people to fill out the survey, and it's easy to use and take the information.
Well, I appreciate this because we've all talked in different settings, about certain areas that we feel like have improved, or like that we feel like we've gotten feedback from the community or teachers even, and we feel like,
Yep.
like it's anecdotal that you would say, like, yeah, I think this is better, I think that's better, but like this kind of adds teeth to those feelings, right?
Sure.
And like makes it, we can
So
show
in
you
some
better.
way, feelings, and this is true.
Right, exactly. So this really supports like what we were probably already kind of feeling, right? So that's encouraging. Great job. I mean, this is really a reflection of you and the work that you've done and you and your team. But I mean, that starts at the top, in my opinion. So, great job. You too, also great job.
My plan would be to continue. I think that I see a lot of value in this and be able to track things over time. So I think that it is a service that's I think it's well worth the money and something that I will continue to monitor. Our administrative team will look at those questions and really dive down to the granular level. And then on an annual basis, I'd like to just report out to the board on how we're doing on those indexes. And are we making certain headway or not?
Are you able to grab information out of this to use for marketing for our district?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure I was planning on, and I don't know how yet, but last year I did the annual report that came out, and I'm doing something similar this year. And I think that some of this information should be included in that.
Mm-hmm. So, anybody else have any comments? Are you finished?
That's all I have for
okay.
tonight. Yep.
Didn't mean to.
Nope. Thank you.
Anybody have anything before we adjourn? All right, let's go. Anybody?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Taylor? Thompson?
Yes.
Vansickle?
Yes.
Bergstrom?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes.